Before we go to the real agenda, I just want to emphasize myself. So people tend to call me Waldo, and in many cases, somebody in our company said, just ask Waldo, and nobody knows who Waldo is. So that's the reason that I put the Waldo over there. So I'm Waldo, hi. And the other one who is also going to speak today, and my contact information is over there. If you prefer to contact me, please do so. My role at Microsoft is look after for the ecosystem for developers and companies that are building on Windows Phone or planning to do that or would like to find an ISV that are doing that. We are really interested about hearing what you do, what you have done, because that's helps us to actually connect the dots between different partners. Also today is our official widow. So Drazen over here. He's going to do the technical part, so I'm the guy who is talking, and he's the one who is actually doing something interesting. So we divided these two sessions in a way that first we are going to cover the UI and the thinking about how we build up a prototype of application, because normally you see the demos where somebody builds something really quick, and that's it. And then you go home, try to figure out how that works. You don't have the source code, you don't have the snippets, which we are going to use just in the sake of time. So we will share all of that content to you so you can go those through later on. And the second session that we have today, I think after lunch, is we actually start building the code behind the UI that we built on the first session. So let's do really quick lap around about Windows Phone. So you've probably all seen the nice marketing videos, and we decided to skip that too this time. So we don't have any really traditional, cool-looking videos on the screen, at least not in our two sessions. And because this session is all about creating the app itself and getting a good overview about what all the templates are, how they are used, and getting started with that side. And building the foundation also for all the other sessions that we are going to have. So you probably all see this one. I showed this last year in TechDays. So how many of you were in TechDays in a phone track last year? Like third or something, okay. So I'm not going to spend so much time on this, but it's really important to understand that this is where we have lived so far. So we have had a lot of different smartphones that are providing a lot of applications to us. But the main problem on that side has been that it's not consistent over app over app. So if you use one app and you download another app, you need to learn that new app again, right? All the navigation, there are some consistency on that side, but not always. So that's the key thing that on Microsoft side, on Windows Phone side, what the smart guys started to do when they totally reset the whole plan for Windows Phone, they actually started to do Windows Mobile 7.0, and they were going to do exactly the same mistakes. Luckily they didn't. They decided to reset the whole thing and rethink the whole approach for Windows for phones. So that's the reason that the positioning on how people are using that phone and how the apps are built is based on the people. Thinking about how people are using that. What would be the best experience for the people? That's one of the reasons there are some restrictions with the model, with the application model. You need to do some tricks and go around with the application life cycle and so on, which we will cover later on within these 2 days. Those are the reasons that we want to make sure that whenever you build an application, you can screw it up in the way that the user doesn't like their phone anymore. Because that happens. People tend to build, and we do, and probably many of you know the experience that somebody is trying to call you and your phone is jammed. It doesn't just work. Sounds familiar? Yeah? Many people are nodding over here, yes? And the reason for that is not that they always would be really bad. The most common reason for that one is that there is one or two applications that are using all the power for the phone. And therefore, the user doesn't get the ultimate control for their own phone. So that's the reason, that's the approach that we took with the Windows Phone side. One of the key things on this side is also that thinking about when you use your phone, you shouldn't need to spend too much time with your phone if you don't want to. If you want to check out the Twitter, or you want to check out the social media overall, like what's happening in Facebook, what are your different friends doing? If you want to, let's say that you're tracking 400 people in Facebook. That's a lot of feeds that you get when people are sending something over there. So on Windows Phone, you can actually group people, and you can just monitor those people within that group and see all those feeds for that group. It helps a lot with the usage of the phone when you don't need to go to a separate different applications to do certain things. You can do the most common things with the OS that it provides to you. Also, thinking about when you have those groups, you can also pin those to your front screen, which means that when you have as a live tile on your front screen, you can, on the start page, you can actually see on that live tile what's happening. If somebody in that group sent you an email or post something to the Twitter or something to the Facebook, you will see that in the live tile. So it's much, much easier to just check your phone, see, okay, that's happening something, that's something that interests me. I'm going launch that application and check what's it's all about. Instead of time to time going to the Facebook app or going to the Twitter app and going to a third app and so on. So it's on the communication side, it's a fundamental thing that the experience is fluent. When you build your own application, if you follow up also we will talk just slightly about Metro, about the guidelines. If you build your own apps, you can also connect your apps in a way to the OS. Let's say you would be building an application that is you could edit some images with it. You could actually connect your application, register that to be an image application. So with that, people from their images could access to your application that is doing something with images. Or if you're building an audio application, you could actually integrate that application to the system in a way that it feels that it belongs to the phone. It's not just another app. It belongs to that phone. You can actually control all the audio and so on from that, from the system's buttons. If you have the lock screen on and you have the audio controls on that lock screen, you can actually control your own application's audio through there. So those are the certain examples why you should definitely concentrate to build up a consistent experience when you're building applications. We have a lot of great apps, let's say on iPhone, and people love those, okay? Those are really, really many times downloaded, those apps. Now that developer that built that app that people really, really have used and download, took that app, put that on Windows Phone, wishing that the experience would be as good as on the other side, because on the, let's say on iPhone side, there's so many apps, it's really, really hard to stand out from there at these times. So now that then they took their application on Windows Phone side, but they didn't follow up the Metro. It felt that it doesn't belong to the system. Instead of having separate apps, even though they are separate apps, the full experience for the user should be that I'm using my phone and I'm just extending the experience with additional experiences that belongs to that phone, right? So that's the key thing with the whole approach when we're now that what we're going to talk in the UI part over here. So, as I said, the key thing is to have integrated experience on that side. It's important to have that in a way that it feels immediately when you take that application and start using that, you know how to navigate in that app. You know where to find the settings. You know how to do the most common things that you always do in the apps. So users already know half about your app, even though they never seen that before. because they know the basic stuff that are built into the OS and to the Metro guidelines itself. So already talk about live tiles, about pinning the live tiles over there. But the interesting thing is also that your application can actually have a multiple live tiles. You can take your application and have a deep link into the application to a certain functionality. Let's say you will be booking flights, and in certain place inside your application, there's a place where you can see your ticket. You could pin up that to your front screen, and when the user actually clicking that, they would go directly to your application, but not to the launch screen, but to that particular ticket, and therefore have a quick access to that one too. Live agents and cameras, we are going to talk about those more during these 2 days, and therefore I'm not going so deeply over there. And I already talked about the live management and the different way with that. So we do have the multitasking also for the third-party applications. The model is slightly different. There are certain things that you can't do. You need to give some functionalities to the OS to actually manage. They make sure that even though you would be building a crappy application, it doesn't ruin the experience for the user, because that's the most important part of that one. So, I love these slides here. Well, when we start to talk about the Metro itself and talking about what the Metro is, so we do have Metro, not in Espoo yet, but we do have Metro on phones. We do have Metro on Windows 8 also, which we have sessions tomorrow too. And I know there's a lot of interesting sessions going on during these 2 days, so be calm. Everything is going to be recorded, so you can also come back to those sessions. But talking about the Metros really, really shortly, the key thing on Metro is to simplify. Instead of thinking about iconographic, think about typographic, thinking about the content itself, think about what actually matters. If you look at these slides, slide over here, you can see, for example, when you go to an airport, you see that there is an arrival B. So the B is something that matters. That's the same way how the Metro UI is built on the phone side. If you open up your phone, you see the lock screen. Those things that you normally use the most are emphasized with biggest font and so on. And using colors to emphasize certain things, it's really, really important on that side. So think about the Windows Phone, think about the Metro, it's baked in. If you don't know anything about UI, that's okay, or like designing, that's okay. You can even do really, really decent application without any knowledge about UI side. So all the controls are already supporting that and helping that. So when you start to build your application, it's really, it feels like even like illegally easy to build application nowadays on phones, because all the controls helps on that process so much. So we will share these slides, so also the link over there which tells some more about the experience and the design guidelines. You find those on that side. Talk about the tools itself. Drazen will talk much more, or actually show the tools, so I'm not spending so much time on this one. The only thing which is good to understand from this slide and overall is that Express and Blend is really, really good tool. If you're a coder, you should familiarize yourself with the Express and Blend, even though you don't think yourself as a designer. Think yourself as a coder. That's fine. I think myself more than coder as a designer. But still, it's a tool that helps you to get things done. And Drazen will show you that really shortly. Also the templates. There are a lot of different templates on the SDK. So use those templates to actually build up the application, get familiarize yourself with it. There are different templates for the background agents. There are different templates for panoramic and so on. So it's really easy way. And also the data binding, data bound template is really good, which you should definitely check out. There will be a talk about MVVM and also the architectural, which talk about that model a lot. So if you haven't familiarized yourself on that yet, please do that. So. And talk about the templates. I think you're going through this, all the templates, so not going so deeply on this. there are different kind of already built-in templates, as said, and that helps a lot with actually the building the whole thing. So thinking about how to design a killer app. So we're getting there. Soon Drazen will come over here and start actually building a mock-up from scratch and building up the application. And as you can see over there, that's actually the application that I think we're referring to that or building that. Which one? Building that. Okay. So Drazen is going to build that application during these two sessions, and the basic thing on that side is that there are certain rules that need to be followed so it looks good, and it's easy to do if you know the rules. So we included some of the resources, not going into those resources now, but some resources over here, so you can actually download this deck from the once we put those publics to the site, and get those resources. So those are really valuable resources to actually getting that done on that side. I think as a last slide, yes, talking about the controls, I think you could talk about more, or Drazen could talk about more about these controls itself, so I let Drazen to come on stage. But the key thing on this, Drazen is actually walking to the stage. This is the hint that you should come over here. Yes. So is that everything is customizable. You can customize whatever you want to do on that side. You can build your controls in a way that button looks like a button or it could look like a fish. It's up to you. But having that said, at the same time, you should also think about, is fish following the Metro guidelines in a way that it's familiar to the users to use? With that, I'll leave the stage to Drazen to actually show us something really awesome. All right.
All right. Thank you. So yeah, my name is Drazen Dodik, and I'm sitting there thinking that I promised to build that app in 2 hours, and I'm now looking at the clock, and I have 35 minutes to build the UI. So you will either see me build something or epically fail. Be prepared. So what we're going to do, we're going to use Expression Blend for the whole first session. Do not run away. Expression Blend is good for you. So we're going to talk about how to actually use some of these controls, how to use these tools. Instead of showing you just the slides and how to create a new button template, we thought that we would build something from scratch, something that will hopefully work. Right. So we have different type of project templates. Windows Phone application is the one that's the basic one, the blank in some sense. Databound shows you how to use multiple pages, pass data between those pages. Panoramas and pivots are just UI controls that we're going to talk about. And then control libraries if you have something that you want to share across multiple projects. We also have a sketch flow path that comes with the full version of Expression Blend, which is usually used for rapid prototyping. Right. So let's just create a new Windows Phone application. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove everything so we truly get a blank project. And I'm going to start off by using a panorama because it's something that we quite often use in different projects. So adding that panorama, we're just going to double click on that and we get a panorama. If you're not familiar with the panorama, the idea is that your phone is this big and the app is this big, and then you basically move across it. The idea is not to have screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, but to have one big screen that you move across. There are a lot of UI things, small UI details over here. If you look at that, for example, you see a small partition of the next page, or it's panorama item 2 from there. So these are small hints to the user that, hey, there's more content on this side. So by default, we have 2 panorama items. I'm just going to add a third one. So right-click on the panorama and add a panorama item. Each one of these just has a grid inside it where we can start adding our items. So let's just start adding information to those screens. What we'll do is, first of all, I'm going to name these. So last weekend, when we started planning these sessions, we decided pretty quickly that we're going to create an app from scratch. But it's quite hard to try to come up with some sort of an app that would use maps and all kinds of launchers and choosers and isolated storage and this and that. So I was thinking about it for a long time, but last weekend I got a big light bulb above my head and decided that it's the hipster brunch locator that I'm going to build that fulfills all the needs. So be ready to be hipsterified. What I'm going to do is, we so often talk about the cocktail flow application, so I'm going to mimic some of those things and show how those are built. So we're going to start off by editing the panoramas template. Just right-clicking on it, on the panorama, and going to just remove the title from there. I'm going to give it some name. No title, panorama. Come back. Basically, it just created us we're going to talk more about templates. What it did, it created a new template, but I left it empty. If I now put a rectangle in it and put it to blue, now my panorama would start adding those features as well. I'm just going to leave it empty because I don't want to have any big title. I just want to have the section names. So something that people often use is they use some sort of a background with the panorama. So how we're going to do that, we're going to select the panorama from here, select background, and then we can choose different kind of brushes. We have solid color brushes, so if we want to change the color, for example, to red, gradients, and so on. We're going to use an image, and this is one of the rare things that I built beforehand, so the actual background for it. You can also define the stretch and so on. These are small details. Now, as you can see, we changed the background, and the foreground is white, so it doesn't look that nice. I'm going to just change it to a dark gray color. Now, when you change, for example, a text color, you want that text color to be available across all of your pages, so it's the same text color everywhere. So if you change it in one place, it would be reflected on all of the locations. So in Expression Blend, thinking that this is a UI design tool or interaction design tool, it has some interesting UI decisions over here. For example, this huge square over here will basically open up a humongous menu with all kinds of interesting properties. For example, convert to a new resource. This would allow us to, for example, say hipster foreground. Now that's the name of our style, of our color, and from our brush resources, you will now see that brush resource. I define it on application level, so now all of the pages can use that. Next thing that we're going to do, I'm just going to add a couple of boxes over here. The first one being browse. So in this first session, we'll just build out the UI controls. And in the next one, we'll then add the functionality to browse all of these and so on. So I have browse. And now, again, I have a text block, and I want to add some style to it. So let's create a new style, and on application level, we're going to say big text. Nice contrast over there, but basically it says browse. I'm going to change the font. So you could use any font that you want to. For example, people love, Comic Sans is already inside it, of course, but let's choose something as interesting, like this font from here. If you want to use some specific fonts, you could just use the font manager and embed them. I'm going to use the default ones, VP Black in this case, and I'm going to say that the size is 22. And foreground, I'm going to use the brush resource. So if at some point I want to change hipster foreground to red, it will be quite easy for me. Now I have browse. Let's then add some sort of text below it describing what browse would actually do. Check out all the cool hipstery branch places. This is the best part of the demo. You'll see me just typing a lot of information in here. So again, we could create a new style for this. Let's say description text, and for example, change it that the size is actually just 14 or 20. And in that style, we're also going to say that use the same foreground. So what this allows us to do is basically, if I now draw a new text box over here, and if I go wild, I can just right click on it, say edit style, apply resource. You see that there are a bunch of text templates already over here. Or I can use mine, for example, big text over there. So it's kind of like creating some sort of CSS styles. Are you ready to surprise yourself with something awesome? This makes no sense, I know, but text is always fun. And again, right click, edit style, apply resource, and then what kind of resource do you want to use? Let's select something useful and description text. Now you see that I've added these items inside the grid. If I want to group them, I just select 2 of them, right click and say group into a grid. And now basically they're in one group. I'm going to do the same thing over here, group into a grid. And this last one will be add. So we could add new cool places to have brunch in. All right, amazing. We added a couple of text boxes. I'm not going to spend too much time. I know I could waste a lot of time just moving 1 pixel right and 1 pixel left and so on. But we're going to run it on the emulator. When we finish this up, we're going to use location and so on, so I'm going to run it on the actual device. But for now, we'll just use the emulator. So now we have a panorama, and you see a panorama is basically just has this wide screen with 3 pages on it, this one being the first one. Nothing special. We'll add navigation in a second to these buttons or those text boxes. So the next one is basically my favorite part of all of these. Using sample data, this is always a fun demo. And I'm going to blame Jukka's computer for everything because... all right. We're going to define new sample data. So thinking about we're creating a prototype, we don't have access to the database, it's not ready yet, but we want to mock up our UI, we want to know what it looks like, we want to create some sample data for us. Branch location, sample data. What this does is creates us a collection, let's say branch location collection, and some properties. Let's just say name, image, and then description. So this will just generate us some sample information based on this. We can select the type. For example, for the image, I could go and select the options are basically string, number, boolean, or image. I'm going to select image, and I have some images over here, so I'm going to select a folder. You can also leave it empty, and you get these amazing chairs that you can use. If you choose string, you have different formats. So lorem ipsum is not the solution for everything. Sometimes you just want to generate email addresses, you want to generate colors, prices, website URLs, whatever. So we're just creating some data that will reflect the real one. And for the description, I'm going to just use a couple of words over here. Now you see what it basically generated us. Description, image, and name. We can say just generate us 6 of these, and we can edit these values like, let's say, tech. See, I'm feeling really innovative today. Windows, phone. These would be the most popular dinner places ever. Right. So we could edit those, we could change the images, whatever. Now we have generated that sample data. How do we start using that? Drag and ta-da, drop. It's over there. And now we can start moving that around. Say, for example, it's going to be this big and this big. Edit some of its templates. So as you can see, the text isn't visible. Currently it's white. So we're going to go to edit a template and item template, because this is a list box. It basically just lists all of the items that we've defined. What we're going to say is, hey, take my name and apply the big text to it. Take the description and apply the description text style to this. So these are the styles that we created earlier. Now you see that this is basically, each item is a stack panel, has 3 elements inside it: text, image, text, that is stacks below each other. So we could just edit it a bit, change it like that, and say that the image size is something like 116 times 160, and put on some margins so we separate them a bit. So now you've got a list. Something else that people want to do is, you see in a lot of applications, one of the panorama screens is much wider than the rest of them, and the elements wrap around it. So, for example, if you go to the People Hub, you go to the recent list, it's much wider. It's not the default width of the panorama. So we're going to do that as well. How to change that? You select the panorama item. You say that the orientation now becomes horizontal, and put some width to it. So we'll say 600. So now it becomes a bit wider. Also, what we want to do, we want to use a control called wrap panel, which will basically take our elements and wrap them around the container. By default, I'm just going to go and add the Silverlight toolkit. So Jukka showed you the PowerPoint slide with the links to additional resources. One of them, sorry, yeah. Yeah. So if you look at the power, so the question was that, is it common to use, like if you use images, to place them at the bottom and to use a white background, or how should we use the panorama background images? If you look at the links that we have on the PowerPoint, they point to, for example, Photoshop templates, and like there's a layer a template that you can use in Photoshop, for example. So if you use an image, a full color image on the background, they suggest adding like a 20% tint on it, or black tint, so a white text would appear more. And so you make it a bit more transparent in some sense if you use a big background image. A lot of the applications do use just the images at the bottom to make the text more readable, but there's the only rule is basically just make sure that your text is readable. If you use a full-sized image on the background, then you should consider making it more transparent, adding a black tint layer on top of it or something, just to make the text readable. So one of the other resources that we have over there is the Silverlight toolkit. The idea with the Silverlight toolkit is that we have a bunch of controls that we do not feel that are ready for the default installation, for the default Silverlight package. So you have a lot of cool controls over there, one of them being the wrap panel. You have controls like rating controls and whatnot. So once you go to Codeplex and install it, I'm just going to show you what it does. What it does is it's basically different types of DLL files over there. Microsoft Phone Controls Toolkit being one of them. With this, you're basically able to use some wrap panels. Now, why you saw that previous wrap panel over there is because Jukka's computer is messed up. I'm just going to blame everything on him today. So I'm just going to call it wrap panel template. So by default, this template, as you can see, is a stack panel. So items will go below each other. We could say that, hey, it's a horizontal stack panel, and they would go next to each other, and so on. What we want to do is want to remove that and add a wrap panel. This makes it's going to use all the available space first on a horizontal, then go to the next row, fill it, next row, fill it, and so on. We're going to use that. And as you can see, some of the text looks a bit funny. Oh, look, I made a mistake. I highlighted the wrong. So if you look at here, this was the name, and this was the description. So let's just change that. Because those are styles, it's easy. We're just going to say description is actually description, and the name is the big text. By default, these text boxes will not wrap, for example. So there's a property over here. You can use the search bar over here, just type wrap, and it shows you text wrapping and allows you to wrap that part. So if you're looking for something like Expression Blend has a bunch of these small arrows and rectangles and whatnot where a lot of the items are hidden, just use the search to find something that you're looking for. So now let's run this. What we see is, now you see this is a bit wider panorama than the rest of them. And you see that it takes me 2 swipes to move on to the next one. So this is something that, for example, the People Hub do that a lot of the applications do. How we did that was just basically change the panorama's orientation to horizontal and set some width to it. All right. So I want to add a couple of more pages before we continue on this page. So we have the browse page. Over there we want to show a listing of all the places. We want to show a map, and in the next session we'll then pinpoint them to a certain point inside the map and show on a map layer where these locations are. So I'm going to add a new page. Right click, add new item, and then you have a bunch of pages over here. Something that I want to highlight is it says Windows Phone page and Windows Phone Panorama page and Windows Phone Pivot page and so on. All of these things are just Windows Phone pages. Panoramas and pivots are controls. As you can see, I didn't create a Windows Phone Panorama application, but I was still able to add a Panorama control. So Panorama is this like a control, just like a button or whatever. So we'll add a browse page. And we want to change the background, but this time we just want to have a gradient over here. So we're going to put something like that, and we want to make it a radial gradient. And again, if you open this up, you get a bunch of more options. I know this takes some time to get used to on how all of this works. So what I want to do is I want to add a map to the first row, to the title, and then add inside the content all of my other data. So what we could do to add a map, type in map. It shows you the map control. And I'm going to double click on that. Now we got our amazing map over there. This makes it extremely easy to get started with the maps and with location and all of that kind of stuff. We're going to come back to the map in the next session. I just want to have it over there for now. Now over here we just want to show all the branch locations. So again, I'm going to drag and drop it. Get it over here. Let's see if I just apply the old template. Go edit template and over here. So in this page, I want to show a much bigger image. Let's say 200, 200. Well, that's a bit too much. Let's keep it over there. And I want to show some text and the description. But this time I want to have a long description. Now I have much more space. I want to use a longer description. So I want to use sample data with a longer description. You don't have to start from beginning. You can just add more properties over here. Let's say long description. And we can say that lorem ipsum generated this many words. Yes, 100 words. That's nice. And now we can start using that. We're going to just drag and drop it over here. And you see it created us an amazing block of color text over here. Also, something that people usually don't know is, like, currently I have a stack panel. Items go below each other or next to each other. We want to have more control. We want to have a grid or something that we can easily align items. You can just right-click and change the layout type. You get the different options over here. I'm just going to use a grid. This allows me basically just to take this branches text from here and move it a bit around. Also for the description text, I want to have it over here. I want to put it some width. Let's say 100. No. Oh, that's height. Sorry. 100. Let's put it something like that. And again, why doesn't it show all the text? But because by default it doesn't wrap the text around. So if we go to text wrapping, wrap. We generated 100 words, so let me just zoom in a bit. You see that there's some content over there as well. We can use the text trimming, word ellipsis, and now it will basically just trim it down so it fits to the screen that you want to use. All right, so a simple page to navigate, to browse through all of the locations. Now, if we want to navigate to that page, we can go to C#, we can go navigation service.navigate, new URI, this is the XAML page, go over here and so on. But if we just want to, we don't want to pass any parameters, we don't want to handle anything special, we can just use a behavior. So behaviors in Expression Blend are like code snippets or in Visual Studio. So basically, there's a bunch of them built in, or you can build them yourself. So you can build your own behaviors and then just add them to Expression Blend to use them. There's one called Navigate to Page action. And I'm going to say that on this grid, I'm going to navigate to a page, browser page. And when we run this, see panorama, and we have our browse page over here. Now there's a small problem over here. You might not actually realize it, but by default this says mouse left button down, meaning that now when I press on the text and try to scroll, to swipe, it won't swipe, it will navigate, because mouse left button down hits, it navigates. It doesn't allow me to scroll to the page. Also, people, for some reason, use a map inside a panorama, which is extremely annoying. So you can't swipe the panorama, because as you try to swipe the panorama, the map moves. And actually, I met one guy who built his application like this a couple of weeks ago, and he said, yeah, so I just tell my users to swipe, put their fingers on the title and swipe from there. So if you swipe somewhere else, the map is going to go, you're going to screw up the map. So just, you have these tactically placed small positions on your page that you can use to swipe left and right. not the best decision. So I'm just going to change this to a tap, which also is much better for a smartphone. Why do we have mouse left button up, mouse left button down, mouse over, mouse enter, mouse leave, so on? None of these will hit these mouse enters and leaves on a smartphone. Why do we have this? Because Silverlight comes as a browser plugin. It comes from the web world, and Blend is still offering you these amazing features. So now we can swipe, but if we tap on it, it navigates. So for navigation, you could use something simple like that. All right, I want to add one more page, and that page would basically be the details page. So when I select one item, I want to see the details page. On that details page, we would show more information and add some extra controls over there. So I'm just going to name it details page. Again, God, I hate this one. Right-click on the project, add new item. The new item is a Windows Phone page called details page. Okay. All right. So now again, we're going to talk about resources. In my browse page, I changed the background to look similar to on my image. So what I can do now is, this is the background gradient. Again, I'm going to click on the magical 5x5 rectangle over here and choose convert to a new resource. And I'm going to use this as a hipster gradient. Everything's hipster today. So you basically choose, are you using this on application level, document, or resource dictionaries? Application, of course, it's available to all pages, this page only on that page. And resource dictionaries is definitely useful when you start to have more and more styles over there. So with these resource dictionaries, I, for example, like to have one dictionary just for the colors, so for all of my gradients and solid colors, and to separate basically spread them down a bit. I'm going to say hipster gradient is available on location, on application level. So now, over here, I can just say, hey, start using the hipster gradient. And for my text colors, just start using the foreground. So we want to build out a UI now. We want to test what everything looks like. As I said, in this session, we will basically drag and drop the controls over there, make it look pretty. And then in the next, we'll actually generate some data, place it over there, make the map work, make the live tiles work, and all that type of stuff. But we want to have it in a way that when I do it in Expression Blend, like thinking that like there's one person in Expression Blend and one person in Visual Studio. I want that person in Visual Studio, when he has the data ready, I just want him be able to say, this is the new data, don't use the sample data, use this data, and it would automatically work. So I don't want to go make him stab anything in my pretty XAML. Had bad experiences with this as well. Never let people touch your XAML. So I'm going to change a couple of things over here. My hipster locator would be the name. And again, I want to use the data so I can mock up what it looks like. But this time, I want to select. Again, you see these humongous buttons over here that say list mode and details mode. If you go on a details mode, now it will just give you the first element from there that against you can design your application. So we're going to say, for example, that the name will be bound over here when we get branches. The image goes over here. The image is this big. And then we're going to put the long description. And let's put it into some style again. Like this. So now we have just a couple of elements over there. Let's put it to wrapping again. You get the point. We also want to add, for example, price. Whoa. Price and generate us some prices from here. So each place, how much does it cost to have brunch over there, for example. And let's put it to some style again. How you should also look at this is, for example, if we move it like this and put the name over here. Let's put the name. You should always, when you design your application, look at the existing applications. Look at how do they work, what's their focus on, what have they changed, how have they designed the apps, and so on. So if we just make this looks like a cheap-ass version, but it kind of looks like the marketplace layouting. You would have the marketplace only has a rating control over here and these type of things. So look at the system pages. What does the marketplace look like, the people hub and so on, and take inspiration from them so you know how to design actual application. One last thing that I want to do before we wrap up this session is basically add an application bar. Now, we're not going to go into the details about the application bar, but something that you should know. The application bar is the only thing inside your application that will come on top of the soft input panel, on top of the keyboard. Meaning, when you have an input field, for example, you want someone to type in their name, the keyboard will cover up like half of your screen, and if your save button is under that keyboard, it's going to be a pain in the ass to actually click on that. So if you use an application bar, it comes here on the bottom, and it's going to always be on top of your keyboard. To add an application bar, you can add a button, and let's say that the first is pin. So we want to pin this place to the front screen. We have some icons ready over here. Unfortunately, pin is not one of them. But we're going to point you to these resources. But there is one guy who has built this huge collection of different icons that you could use inside your application for the application bar. As you can see, there's really a lot of them. And one of them being the pin. You can use the pin, or for example, let's say we want to share this. We want to send out, we'll use a launcher to send out a text message to, hey, check out this place. For the share, we have this somewhat strange icon. It's a gift box. So we're going to use the share icon. And the last thing that we're going to do is we could add some maps. So I'm going to go to icons and just find the map over there. Now I have the map icon. Let's run this. We have this. Now when we click on this, nothing happens. We add the functionality after the break. For now, I can just right-click over here and say Startup. And now my details page will become the startup page. So when the application launches, this is the page that you'll see. It doesn't show any data now because we didn't connect it over there. And we have our application icons down here. Why all of this is good to know? Because you don't want to go and write every single thing by hand. So everything that we do is at the end just some XAML. We don't want to go and waste our time just writing XAML all over again every single time. All right, so we had about 30 minutes. We built a couple of pages and so on. So in the next session, we would add basically the functionality. We'll add the send out a text message, use the map, navigate through different pages, pass in the data, and so on. Right. We have 3 minutes and 22 seconds for questions. Any questions? No one. One question over there. Yeah, of course my blog. So what are good resources for learning Blend? The grid is something that's extremely holy to every single Windows Phone developer. It's just basically a PNG file with some like transparent red boxes. And it would help you to align the elements. To actually learn Expression Blend, I would go to microsoft.com/design/toolbox, link over there. There's a huge course on Expression Blend. Also Avlaid, if you go to avlaid.com/Windows Phone, they have a huge, like a full course on Windows Phone material that you can download. So those are great places to get started with. We also have Photoshop templates and so on. So if you're used to building your application inside Photoshop or Illustrator, you can continue doing that, import it inside Expression Blend, and then just add the interactions inside Expression Blend. All right? Any other questions? Yeah.
So we do have a session which also talks about localization and customizing on that side. So,
but yeah, you have the tools for that. You have like Silverlight 3. We had right to left support for text, and then you can use not resource dictionaries but research dictionaries as well to basically define this is like in different languages what it is, and then you use the same kind of binding that we did in Expression Blend. So I didn't type branch into everything. For example, over here I said, I know some of you can't see this, but it says binding to brush collection. So you could just bind it to a resource, for example name, or well, I don't know, something that's in multiple different languages, and then just change, the binding would operate under that. So there's a session on that, but you can use binding resource dictionaries and then right to left controls for that.
It is built in .NET in a way that you just point to that key and you get the value for that right culture.
Right.
Right.
So, I think that's about it.
That's about it. So now we have a lunch break.